The coffee in Hanul Kim's cup had gone cold hours ago. She sat in the dim blue glow of the monitoring station, her eyes fixed on the screens that showed nothing but empty space. The deep space station called Horizon's Edge floated silently in, the darkness between stars. It was her job to listen for signals from the void, and most nights the void had nothing to say. Tonight was different. The first sign came as a whisper in the static. Hanul leaned forward, adjusting the sensitive equipment with practiced fingers. The signal was weak, coming from somewhere near the Kepler 4R42 system. She had been doing this job for 6 years, and she knew what normal space chatter sounded like. This was not normal. "Computer, clean up the signal," she said quietly. The AI responded, filtering out the background noise. What emerged made her blood run cold. It was a human voice speaking in broken English. The words were hard to make out, but she could hear the fear in them. "Please, anyone, if you can hear this, they have us. The minds. So many of us." Hanul's hands shook as she reached for the emergency button that would alert the senior staff, but she stopped herself. She needed to be sure. She needed to record everything. The signal grew stronger. Images began to appear on her secondary screen. At first, she thought it was some kind of mistake. The computer must be mixing signals or playing old archived footage. But the timestamp in the corner of the images showed a date from 3 days ago. The images showed humans, dozens of them. They were working in what looked like massive underground mines, their clothes torn and dirty. Alien creatures that Hanul had never seen before stood watch over them. These aliens were tall and thin with gray skin and 4 arms. They carried weapons that glowed with blue energy. "This can't be real," Hanul whispered to herself. But the signal kept coming. More images flooded her screen. Humans in cages. Humans being branded with hot metal. Humans falling to their knees from exhaustion while the gray aliens shouted at them in a language she didn't understand. Some of the humans in the images were just children. Hanul felt sick. She wanted to look away, but she forced herself to keep watching and recording. Someone had to witness this. Someone had to know. The voice in the transmission spoke again, clearer this time. Day 1847 of captivity, the Velkari took another group to the processing center today. We don't know what happens there, but no one comes back. If anyone receives this message, please know that we tried to be strong. We tried to remember what it means to be human. Tell our families. Tell them we never stopped hoping. The transmission cut to static, then silence. Hanul sat in the darkness for a long moment, staring at the blank screen. Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of what she had just witnessed. There were no human colonies in the Kepler 442 system. She was sure of it. The star charts showed nothing but empty space and a few lifeless rocks. She pulled up the official records on her computer. According to every database she could access, humanity had never sent ships to that sector. There were no exploration missions, no colony ships, no research stations, nothing. But she had just seen proof that humans were there. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, living as slaves under alien masters called the Velkari. Hanul's training kicked in. She saved all the data from the transmission to 3 separate drives, then sent an encrypted copy to the secure archives. Whatever was happening out there, this evidence had to survive. She was about to contact her superior when footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. The door to her station slid open, and Minho Park walked in. He was the senior analyst for their shift, a quiet man in his 50s who had worked in deep space communications longer than anyone else on the station. "I saw the alert flags on the system," Minho said, settling into the chair beside her. "What did you find?" Hanul hesitated. She had worked with Minho for 2 years and she trusted him, but what she was about to show him would change everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. "You need to see this," she said finally. "But I warn you, it's bad. Really bad." She played back the transmission for Minho, watching his face grow pale as the images appeared on the screen. When the recording ended, he sat in silence for several minutes. "Where did this come from?" he asked. "Kepler 442 system. But according to our records, there's nothing there. No human presence at all. Minho rubbed his temples. Could it be fake? Someone trying to cause panic? Hanul shook her head. I've analyzed the signal. It's real. The quantum signatures match long-range transmission protocols. This came from 127 light-years away, and it was broadcast 3 days ago. Then we have a problem, Minho said quietly. He stood up and walked to the communication panel. I'm calling. Captain Lee. She needs to see this immediately. While Minho made the call, Hanul continued analyzing the data from the transmission. Hidden in the signal were other pieces of information. Coordinates for multiple star systems. Names of what appeared to be other slave colonies. And most disturbing of all, shipping manifests that listed humans like cargo. Captain Jiwon Lee arrived within minutes. She was a stern woman in her 40s, who had served in the Earth Defense Force before taking command of Horizon's Edge. She listened to the transmission without speaking, her face growing darker with each passing second. How many people know about this? She asked when the recording ended. Just the 3 of us, Minho replied. Hanul followed proper security protocols. Captain Lee nodded. Good. This information is now classified at the highest level. I want both of you to sign confidentiality agreements before you leave this room. Captain, Hanul said carefully, shouldn't we report this to Earth Command? There are humans out there who need help. Oh, we're reporting this, Captain Lee said grimly. But I have a feeling that when we do, we're going to learn some things that the government doesn't want us to know. She pulled up a secure communication channel to Earth. The transmission would take several hours to reach home, and the response would take just as long to come back. In the meantime, they could only wait and try to process what they had discovered. Captain, Minho said, there's something else. I've been running the transmission through our translation software. The aliens in the images, the ones the voice, called Velkari, they're speaking a language that's partially in our database. What do you mean? Captain Lee asked. We have records of this language. It means we've had contact with these aliens before. Official contact. The 3 of them looked at each other in growing horror. If Earth had made contact with the Velkari, and humans were still being held as slaves, it could only mean one thing. The government knew. They had always known. Hanul stared at the dark screen where the images of human slaves had appeared. Somewhere out there beyond the stars, people were suffering. They were calling for help, hoping that someone would hear their voices in the darkness. Now someone had heard, and everything was about to change. Captain Lee began typing her report to Earth Command, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. She chose her words carefully, knowing that this message would likely determine the fate of thousands of humans scattered across distant worlds. As she worked, Hanul continued, monitoring the deep space channels. She was hoping for more transmissions, more clues about where the slaves were being held. The Velkari might have made a mistake by allowing that signal to be sent. But she suspected it wasn't a mistake at all. Someone out there wanted Earth to know the truth. Someone wanted to wake up humanity to the horror that had been hidden from them for so long. The question was, what would humanity do when it finally learned what had been done to its people? Outside the station, the stars continued their ancient dance, cold and distant. But Hanul no longer saw them as beautiful points of light in the darkness. Now she saw them as destinations where humans might be suffering, calling out for rescue. That might never come, unless someone was brave enough to try. Dr. Taehyun Choi was working late in his laboratory when the encrypted message arrived. The xenobiology lab at Seoul University was quiet at this hour, with only the soft hum of equipment keeping him company. He had been studying alien tissue, samples for the past 12 hours, trying to understand how different species adapted to various planetary environments. The message icon blinked red on his computer screen. High priority, maximum encryption. Only a few people had access to his secure channels, and most of them wouldn't contact him this late unless something was very wrong. He opened the message and saw a name he hadn't seen in 3 years. Salman Kang. She had been his research partner once, back when they both worked for the government's xenobiology division. Then she had disappeared one day, leaving only a note saying she had found work elsewhere. Taehyun, the message read, I know, it's been a long time, but I need to see you. Tonight. There are things happening that you need to know about. Things involving your research on human adaptability. Meet me at the old cafe near your university at midnight. Come alone, and make sure you're not followed. Trust me on this. Your life may depend on it. Soman Tae-hyun stared at the message for several minutes. Soman had always been dramatic, but she wasn't the type to make jokes about life and death. If she said his life was in danger, she probably meant it. He looked at his watch. It was already 11:30. If he was going to meet her, he needed to leave now. The cafe was a small, dimly lit place that stayed open all night for students and insomniacs. When Tae-hyun arrived, he found Soman sitting in a corner booth, her back to the wall and her eyes constantly scanning the room. She looked older than he remembered, and there were worry lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. "You came," she said as he sat down across from her. "Your message was hard to ignore," Tae-hyun replied. "What's this about, Soman? Where have you been for the past 3 years?" She leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. "I've been working with a group called the Resistance. We're trying to expose the truth about what the Earth government has been doing behind closed doors." "What truth?" Soman pulled out a small device and placed it on the table between them. "This is a signal jammer. It will keep anyone from listening to our conversation. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I have proof." She activated the device and continued. "For the past 50 years, the Earth government has been secretly trading humans to alien civilizations. Not volunteers, not criminals who chose exile instead of prison, regular people who were kidnapped and sold like animals." Tae-hyun felt his stomach drop. "That's impossible. The government would never. The government has been lying to us about everything," Somin interrupted. "Those new technologies we've been getting, the advanced medical treatments, the improved space drives, the alien materials we study in our labs, we paid for all of it with human lives." She pulled out a tablet and showed him a series of documents. They were shipping manifests, but instead of listing cargo, they listed people, names, ages, physical descriptions, and something called adaptation ratings. "Look at this one," Somin said, pointing to a specific entry. "Kim Min-jae, age 24, high physical strength, excellent problem-solving skills, adaptation rating, 9.2. He was shipped to something called the Valkyrie Mining Consortium 2 years ago." Tae-hyun recognized the format. It was exactly like the biological classification systems he used in his own research. But these were human beings being classified like laboratory specimens. "How many people are we talking about?" he asked quietly. "Over 200,000 in the past 50 years. They disappear from overpopulated sectors, prison systems, homeless populations. People no one will miss, or at least no one with the power to investigate. But why? What do the aliens want with humans?" Soman's expression grew even more grim. "Humans are valuable because we're adaptable. We can survive in environments that would kill most other species. We heal quickly, we learn fast, and we don't give up easily. To them, we're the perfect slave species." She showed him more documents, photos of humans working in alien mines, humans being used as test subjects for dangerous experiments, humans fighting each other in gladiatorial arenas for alien entertainment. "The Valkyrie are the worst," Somin continued. "They've been running breeding programs. They treat humans like livestock, selecting the strongest and smartest to produce the next generation of slaves." Tae-hyun felt sick. He pushed the tablet away, unable to look at the images anymore. "How do you know all this? How did you get these documents?" "The Resistance has people everywhere. Some work in government agencies, some in the military, some in private companies that handle the logistics. We've been gathering evidence for years, waiting for the right moment to expose everything." "Why haven't you released this information already?" "Because the government has ways of making inconvenient truths disappear. Journalists who ask too many questions have accidents. Whistleblowers commit suicide. Documents get lost or classified beyond reach. We needed to build a network strong enough to survive the government's response." Soman leaned back in her chair. "But something changed recently. We received intelligence that a deep space monitoring station intercepted a transmission from one of the slave colonies. The government is scrambling to contain the information, but it may already be too late. What do you need from me? Taehyun asked. Your research on human adaptability has been used to help select victims. The government has been using your data to identify people who would survive alien environments. I need you to help us understand exactly how the selection process works, and I need you to help us find a way to track where the missing people have been taken. Taehyun thought about all the research he had done over the years, all the papers he had written about human resilience and adaptability. He had been proud of his work, thinking he was contributing to humanity's expansion into space. Now he learned that his research had been used to condemn thousands of people to slavery. There's someone else you need to meet, Somin said. His name is Hyunwoo Nam. He used to be a military commander, but now he runs rescue operations. He's actually been to some of the slave colonies. Rescue operations? Mostly small-scale extractions. He's saved maybe 100 people over the past 5 years, but it's dangerous work. The aliens don't like losing their property. She stood up and gathered her devices. Can you meet us tomorrow night? Same time, but at a different location. I'll send you the address. Somin, Taehyun said as she prepared to leave. How bad is this really? Are we talking about a few isolated incidents or? Taehyun, she said sadly. We're talking about genocide. Slow, systematic genocide. They're not just taking our people. They're trying to break our spirit, to make us accept that humans are nothing more than a resource to be harvested. She looked out the window at the city lights. But they made a mistake. They underestimated what humans are capable of when we get angry. Really angry. After Somin left, Taehyun sat in the cafe for another hour, trying to process everything she had told him. He pulled out his phone and looked at the research files stored on it. Papers about human endurance, studies on genetic diversity, analyses of how humans adapted to different planetary conditions. All of it had been used to help aliens select the best human slaves. He thought about his colleagues, his students, his friends. How many of them knew the truth? How many were involved in the conspiracy? How many were just as ignorant as he had been? The next evening, Taehyun met Somin and Hyunwoo Nam in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Hyunwoo was a big man with scars on his hands and a haunted look in his eyes. He moved like a soldier, always alert, always ready for danger. Dr. Choi, Hyunwoo said, shaking his hand. Somin tells me you want to help. I want to understand, Taehyun replied. I want to know how my research was used and I want to know what we can do to stop it. Hyunwoo nodded and activated a holographic display. It showed a map of known space with dozens of red dots marking alien star systems. Each of these dots represents a location where we know humans are being held, Hyunwoo explained. Some are mining colonies, some are research facilities, some are breeding centers. The conditions vary, but they're all bad. He zoomed in on one of the dots. This is where I conducted my last rescue operation, a research station run by a species called the Thek. They were using humans to test new biological weapons. Images appeared on the display. Humans in laboratory cages, their bodies covered with strange growths and modifications. Some were barely recognizable as human anymore. I was able to extract 12 people from that facility, Hyunwoo continued, but there were at least 50 more that I couldn't save. The facility was too well defended. What happened to the ones you rescued? Taehyun asked. Most of them didn't survive the journey home. The aliens had done too much damage to their bodies. The 3 who made it are in a secure medical facility, but they may never fully recover. Taehyun stared at the images, feeling a rage building inside him that he had never experienced before. These were his people, members of his species, being tortured and experimented on by alien monsters. How long has this been going on? He asked. The slave trade started about 70 years ago, Somin answered. At first, it was just a few hundred people per year. The Human Liberation Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Valkyrie home system, with all weapons charged. Admiral Donghyun Lim stood on the bridge of the flagship Righteous Fury, watching as target designations appeared on the tactical display. 12 Valkyrie worlds, dozens of space stations, and hundreds of ships that had grown comfortable in their role as humanity's captors. That comfort was about to end. "Admiral," reported Captain Wu Jin-Oh from the lead assault ship Unbroken, "we're detecting massive slave processing facilities on the third planet. Sensors show approximately 50,000 human life signs." Lim felt his jaw tighten. 50,000 humans on just one world. The intelligence reports had suggested the numbers would be high, but seeing it confirmed still hit like a physical blow. "Any sign that they've detected us?" Lim asked. "Negative, sir. They appear to be going about normal operations. The Velkari always assumed no one would be foolish enough to attack them directly." Dr. Nari Jung, the fleet's tactical psychologist, looked up from her analysis station. She had spent months studying captured Velkari communications and behavioral patterns, learning how the enemy thought. "Admiral, this is exactly what we expected," she said. "The Velkari have grown arrogant. They've been the dominant power in this region for centuries. They've never faced serious resistance from their slave species." She brought up a holographic display showing Velkari military formations. "Look at their defensive positioning. They're set up to intimidate and control, not to fight a real war. Their ships are designed to suppress rebellions by primitives with basic weapons, not to face an organized military force." "What about their technology advantage?" asked General Kyung-Ho Shin, who commanded the ground assault forces. "That's their weakness," Dr. Young replied. "They've become dependent on technological superiority. They've forgotten how to fight enemies, who can think and adapt. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. War is in our DNA. The Velkari haven't fought a real war in living memory." Lim nodded. The psychological analysis matched what they had learned from rescued slaves. The Velkari were bullies who had never been challenged by equals. They were about to learn the difference between terrorizing helpless captives and facing trained soldiers who wanted to kill them. "Signal the fleet," Lim ordered. "Begin Operation Homecoming." The human liberation fleet spread out across the system like a cancer, moving toward every installation that showed signs of human presence. They had practiced this assault for months, refining their tactics based on intelligence gathered from rescued slaves and captured Velkari technology. Captain Wu Jin-Oh led the first wave toward the slave processing center on Velkari Prime. His ship Unbroken had been built from the hull of a civilian transport, but it now bristled with weapons powered by alien technology. The irony wasn't lost on him that they were using Velkari power cores to kill Velkari. "Incoming transmission from the planet's surface," reported his communications officer. "The Velkari are demanding we identify ourselves and state our business." Wu Jin smiled grimly. "Put me through to them." The screen flickered, showing a tall, gray-skinned Velkari in ornate robes. The alien's forearms gestured in what appeared to be annoyance at being disturbed. "Unidentified vessels," the Velkari said in accented English. "You are trespassing in consortium space. Explain your presence or you will be destroyed." "My name is Captain Wu Jin-Oh of the Human Liberation Fleet," Wu Jin replied calmly. "We're here to collect our people and burn down everything you've built on their suffering." The Velkari's expression changed from annoyance to confusion. "Human Liberation Fleet? That is impossible. Humans do not have military capabilities beyond their homeworld. You must be some other species using stolen human ships." "Let me clear up your confusion," Wu Jin said. "We are humans, we are very angry, and we are here to teach you what happens when you enslave the wrong species." He cut the transmission and opened the fleet channel. "All ships, weapons free. Show them what humans do to child stealers." The Unbroken opened fire on the slave facility's defensive shields. The alien barriers flickered and collapsed under the assault of weapons designed specifically to counter Velkari technology. Dr. Gina Wu had done her work well. Similar scenes played out across the system as human ships struck every Velkari installation, simultaneously. The aliens had never faced a coordinated assault before, and their responses were confused and panicked. On the bridge of the Righteous Fury, Admiral Lim watched the tactical display as Velkari ships tried to respond to the attack. Their movements were predictable, following standard defensive protocols that had been designed centuries ago. "They're not adapting," observed Dr. Young. "They're following their manual exactly, even though it's clearly not working." "Good," Limmy replied. "That means they haven't learned to think like us yet." The Velkari fleet finally managed to organize a counterattack, sending their heaviest warships toward the human formation. These were massive vessels, each one 3 times the size of any human ship. Under normal circumstances, the technological advantage would have been overwhelming, but these weren't normal circumstances. The humans weren't fighting fair. Captain Wujin. Watched the Velkari dreadnought Sovereign's Will approach his position. According to intelligence reports, this ship had been used to transport human slaves for over 20 years. Thousands of his people had suffered in its cargo holds. Tactical, do we have target lock on their primary reactor? He asked. Yes, sir. Dr. Wu's modifications to our targeting systems are working perfectly. Fire everything. The Unbroken launched every missile and fired every energy weapon it carried directly at a specific point on the Velkari ship's hull. Dr. Gina Wu had identified weaknesses in Velkari reactor shielding by studying the alien technology they had been given. She knew exactly where to hit them to cause maximum damage. The Sovereign's Will exploded in a ball of superheated plasma, taking with it a dozen smaller Velkari vessels that had been following in its wake. Across the system, similar scenes played out as human ships used their intimate knowledge of Velkari technology to devastating effect. Every alien component that had been traded for human lives was now being used to free those same lives. On the surface of Velkari Prime, General Kyung-ho Shin led the ground assault on the slave processing facility. His soldiers moved through the complex with mechanical precision, following maps provided by Yoonji Baek, a former slave who had escaped 3 years earlier and joined the resistance. Yoonji moved alongside the assault teams, her knowledge of the facility's layout proving invaluable. She had spent 2 years in this place, watching friends disappear into the processing centers and never return. Now she was back, and she was armed. The main holding areas are through this corridor, she told General Shin as they moved deeper into the complex. But be careful. The Velkari have automated defense systems. As if summoned by her words, energy weapons emerged from the walls and began firing at the human soldiers. But the troops were ready. Their armor had been designed to resist Velkari weapons, and their own guns could punch through alien defensive barriers. The Velkari guards they encountered seemed stunned by the ferocity of the human attack. They were used to dealing with broken, malnourished slaves, not trained soldiers burning with righteous anger. Surrender and you will be treated according to military law, General Shin announced over the facility's communication system. Resist and we will show you the same mercy you showed our children. Most of the Velkari guards chose to resist. It was a fatal mistake. The human soldiers moved through the facility like an unstoppable force, freeing human prisoners from cages and gathering evidence of the atrocities that had been committed. What they found was worse than anything they had imagined. Humans branded like cattle. Children separated from their parents and raised in isolation. Medical experimentation that had left people barely recognizable. Breeding programs designed to produce more effective slaves. Each discovery fueled the soldiers' anger, making them more ruthless and efficient. They weren't just liberating a facility. They were dismantling an entire system of oppression. Yoonji led a squad to the processing center, where she had last seen her brother 5 years ago. The room was filled with alien machinery designed to evaluate human specimens and determine their most profitable use. This is where they decide who goes to the mines, who goes to the breeding centers, and who gets sold to the research facilities, she explained to the soldiers. This is where they turned people into products. The squad's demolition specialist looked at the machinery with cold eyes. Not anymore, he said, placing explosive charges on every piece of equipment in the room. Similar operations were taking place throughout the Velkari system. Human ships struck slave transport routes, freeing convoys of prisoners. Special forces teams raided research facilities where humans had been used for biological experiments. Intelligence units captured Velkari officials who had been involved in the slave trade. But the most important discovery came from the primary data center on Velkari Prime. Human technicians, working with equipment designed by Dr. Gina Wu, managed to crack the Velkari computer networks and download their complete operational records. What they found was a map of horror that stretched across dozens of star systems. Uraseo had been planning the data breach for 18 months. She sat in her small apartment in Tokyo, surrounded by computer equipment that hummed quietly in the darkness. Multiple screens displayed code, network diagrams, and encrypted files. She had barely slept in the past week, surviving on energy drinks and determination. Tonight was the night. Everything had to be perfect. The files she was about to release would change the world. Video footage of human slaves, government documents proving the conspiracy, shipping manifests listing people like cargo, and financial records showing payments to alien governments. It was all there, organized and ready for distribution, but she couldn't just dump the information onto the internet and hope people would notice. The government had ways of making inconvenient stories disappear. She needed to release everything at once, across every major news network, social media platform, and communication system on Earth. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as she initiated the final sequence. The malware she had spent months creating began spreading through government networks, media servers, and communication satellites. It was designed to activate simultaneously, at exactly midnight, Universal Standard Time. 5 minutes, she whispered, to herself. Yura had joined the resistance 3 years ago after her brother disappeared from a homeless shelter in Busan. The official report said he had left voluntarily, but she knew better. Jinwoo would never have left without telling her. She had spent 2 years searching for him, following every lead, bribing officials, and hacking into government databases. When she finally found the truth, she wished she hadn't. Jinwoo's name was on a shipping manifest. He had been classified as surplus population and sold to something called the Velkari Mining Consortium. The last record of him was a medical examination noting his excellent physical condition and high stress tolerance. 2 minutes. She thought about all the other families who had lost loved ones, all the people who had been told their relatives had simply disappeared, parents who would never know what happened to their children, children who would never see their parents again. The government had sold them all for alien technology and trade agreements. 30 seconds. Yura's malware was now embedded in thousands of systems across the planet. News networks, social media platforms, government websites, military communications, even the entertainment networks. When midnight struck, every screen on Earth would show the truth. 10 seconds. She held her breath as the countdown reached 0. Across the planet, screens flickered and changed. The evening news was replaced with footage of humans in chains. Social media feeds filled with government documents proving the conspiracy. Gaming platforms displayed images of human children being separated from their parents by gray-skinned aliens, and everywhere the same message appeared. This is what your government has been hiding from you. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Admiral Dongyan Lim was in his office at Earth Defense Force headquarters when every screen in the building simultaneously switched to display the leaked footage. He watched in stunned silence as images of human slaves appeared on his monitor, followed by shipping manifests and financial records. At first, he thought it was some kind of terrorist attack or foreign military operation. But as he read through the documents, the horrible truth became clear. The Earth government had been secretly selling its own citizens to alien civilizations for decades. His communication system exploded with incoming calls. Base commanders from around the world were demanding explanations. News reporters were trying to reach him for comments. Government officials were screaming about security breaches and demanding immediate damage control. But Admiral Lim ignored them all. He was too busy reading through the evidence that proved everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy was a lie. Within hours, the streets of every major city on Earth were filled with angry protesters. People carried signs, demanding answers. They surrounded government buildings, military bases, and corporate headquarters. The carefully maintained order of human society was cracking apart. Dr. Gina Wu was working in her weapons development laboratory when the news broke. She had been designing new defensive systems for Earth space stations using alien technology that the government claimed had been obtained through peaceful trade agreements. Now she learned that the peaceful trade had involved selling human beings. Gina stared at the alien components scattered across her workbench. Every piece of advanced technology, every breakthrough that had pushed humanity forward, had been paid for with human lives. She felt sick thinking about how many people had suffered so that she could have these materials to work with. But as she watched the footage of humans being tortured in alien facilities, her sickness transformed into something else. Rage. Cold, calculating rage that focused her mind like nothing ever had before. She began to see the alien technology differently, not as gifts from benevolent trading partners, but as weapons that could be turned against their creators. The Velkari and their allies had given humanity the tools of their own destruction. Gina started making plans. Meanwhile, in a military command center outside Geneva, Colonel Kyung-ho Shin was dealing with the collapse of military discipline. Soldiers were refusing orders, demanding to know which of their officers had been involved in the conspiracy. Some were calling for immediate military action against the aliens. Others were talking about overthrowing the government. Kyung-ho understood their anger. He felt it too. But he also understood that rage without direction was useless. If humanity was going to respond to this betrayal, it needed to be organized and effective. He began reaching out to other military commanders he trusted, people who had been kept out of the loop, just as he had been. Slowly, carefully, he started building a coalition of forces that could act independently of the corrupt government. The response from the current government was predictably panicked. President Chen appeared on television to claim that the leaked documents were forgeries created by enemy agents. He declared a state of emergency and ordered the arrest of anyone spreading terrorist propaganda. But it was too late. The evidence was too overwhelming, and the people were too angry. Government officials found themselves trapped in their offices as crowds surrounded their buildings. Police and military units began refusing orders to suppress the protests. Within 48 hours, the government of Earth had effectively collapsed. Emergency sessions were held in the United Nations, but most of the delegates were too busy trying to explain their own involvement in the conspiracy to accomplish anything useful. The few honest officials who remained were overwhelmed by the scope of the crisis. That's when Admiral Lim made his move. He appeared on every available communication channel, addressing not just Earth but every human colony and space station in the solar system. Citizens of humanity, he began, his voice calm but carrying an undertone of steel. We have learned that our leaders have betrayed us in the worst possible way. They have sold our people into slavery for their own profit and power. They have traded human lives for alien technology, and they have lied to us about everything. He paused, letting his words sink in. But we are not powerless, we are not victims, we are human beings, and when we are threatened, we fight back. I am calling for the formation of a new military alliance, one dedicated to a single purpose: bringing our people home and making sure this never happens again. The aliens who have enslaved our people think they know us. They have seen us as victims, as resources to be exploited. They are about to learn how wrong they are. We are forming the Human Liberation Fleet. Our mission is simple: find every human slave in the galaxy and bring them home. Destroy every facility that has held our people captive. Make it clear to every alien civilization that humanity is no longer prey. To the Velkari and their allies, we have a message. You took our people. Now we're coming to get them back, and when we do, you're going to learn what it means to face humanity's wrath. The speech was broadcast across the entire solar system. On Mars, colonists cheered and volunteered for military service. On the asteroid mining stations, workers abandoned their jobs to join the fleet. Even on the distant research stations orbiting Jupiter, scientists began converting their laboratories into weapons factories. But the most important response came from the space shipyards orbiting Earth. Workers who had been building civilian vessels and cargo ships suddenly found themselves with new orders. Every ship under construction was converted to military specifications. Every civilian transport was retrofitted with weapons and armor. Dr. Gina Wu found herself in charge of a massive weapons development program, with unlimited resources and the best engineers from around the solar system. She worked with desperate intensity, knowing that every day of delay meant more humans suffering in alien hands. The technology the aliens had given humanity in exchange for slaves was now being turned into weapons designed to kill them. Ion cannons built with Velkari power cores, armor plating made from alien alloys, faster-than-light drives reverse-engineered from captured alien ships. They gave us the tools to destroy them, Gina muttered as she worked. They just didn't realize it. Fleet Admiral Seokjin Yang stood on the bridge of the final judgment as the human liberation fleet approached the Velkari capital world of Grethai. 2 years had passed since the first liberation operation, and in that time, humanity had carved a path of destruction across 12 star systems. The fleet that surrounded him now was 3 times larger than the one that had started this war. Ships built in the orbital yards of Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies formed massive battle groups designed for one purpose: bringing humanity's children home. The universe had learned to fear the sight of human warships emerging from faster-than-light travel. "Admiral," reported Captain Minji Kwan from the intelligence ship Truthseeker, "we're receiving multiple surrender offers from Velkari colonies throughout the system. They're offering to return all human slaves in exchange for mercy." "Admiral," Yang studied the tactical display showing Velkari defenses. After 2 years of watching their worlds burn, the surviving Velkari had learned to fear humans. But fear wasn't enough. Not anymore. "How many humans have we recovered so far?" he asked. 64,891. Confirmed rescues across 43 star systems. "Sir, we estimate there are still 50,000 to 80,000 humans in Velkari territory." Yang nodded grimly. "Almost 800,000 people stolen from Earth and scattered across the galaxy like seeds of suffering. Each one represented a family destroyed, a life ruined, a crime that demanded justice." "Signal the Velkari command," he ordered. "I want to speak to their leadership directly." The main screen flickered, showing the interior of what appeared to be a massive council chamber. Dozens of Velkari officials crowded around a central platform where a single alien stood. Yang recognized him from intelligence reports. "Supreme Administrator Vexthul, the architect of the Velkari slave trade." "Admiral Yang," Vexthul said, his forearms spread in what Velkari considered a gesture of submission. "We are prepared to negotiate. We will return all human property in our possession in exchange for—" "Property?" Yang interrupted, his voice cutting across the communication channel like a blade. "Did you just refer to human beings as property?" Vexthul's translator struggled with the concept of human outrage. We apologize for the terminology. We meant to say that we will return all human persons in exchange for a cessation of hostilities." Yang looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Many of them were rescued slaves themselves, people who had spent years in Velkari facilities before being freed by human forces. Their expressions showed no mercy, no forgiveness, no interest in negotiation. Behind him stood Jaemin Ryu, who had become the unofficial spokesperson for the rescued humans. He had spent 6 years in Velkari breeding facilities before being liberated during the third wave of attacks. The scars on his body told the story of what the aliens considered humane treatment of their slaves. "Admiral," Jaemin said quietly, "may I address them?" Yang stepped aside, giving Jaemin access to the communication system. The rescued human looked directly at the Velkari leadership, his eyes containing depths of pain and rage that no alien could comprehend. "Supreme Administrator," Jaemin began, "my name is Jaemin Ryu. You probably don't remember me, but I spent 6 years in your facilities. 6 years watching friends die, watching children torn from their parents, watching people broken until they forgot what it meant to be human." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You want to negotiate? You want mercy? Let me tell you what mercy looks like from our perspective." Jaemin gestured to the other rescued humans on the bridge. "See these people? They're the lucky ones. They survived long enough to be rescued. But for every person standing here, there are 10 who died in your facilities, 10 who never got to see their families again." The Velkari officials shifted uncomfortably as Jaemin continued. "You turned us into animals. You bred us like livestock. You sold our children to other species for profit. You made us fight each other for your entertainment. And now you want mercy?" Vexthul tried to interrupt. "We were following galactic law. The trade agreements were legal according to—" "Legal?" Jaemin laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. You made those laws. You and the other predator species decided that some beings could be property. You created a system that justified any atrocity as long as the victims were weak enough. He leaned forward, his face filling the screen. But you made a mistake. You assumed that because we could be enslaved, we would always be slaves. You never imagined what would happen when we got angry. Really angry. Admiral Yang stepped forward again. The Human Liberation Fleet is not here to negotiate, Supreme Administrator. We're here to collect our people and burn down everything you've built on their suffering. But surely, Vexthul pleaded, we can reach some accommodation. We have technology to offer, resources, information about other species. We don't want your technology. Yang replied coldly. We've learned to build our own weapons. We don't want your resources. Earth can supply itself. And we don't want your information about other species. He gestured to the tactical display showing the massive human fleet. We've already visited most of them. The Thek Republic is now extinct. The Zephyrian Confederacy surrendered after we destroyed their capital world. The hegemony of Korth tried to negotiate, just like you're doing now. What happened to them? Vexthul asked, though. His expression suggested he already knew. They learned what happens when you hurt human children, Yang said simply. Dr. Minji Quan, who had served as a war correspondent throughout the liberation campaigns, stepped forward to address the Velkhari Council. She had documented every rescue, operation, every destroyed slave facility, every moment of justice delivered to humanity's enemies. Supreme Administrator, she said, I've been recording this war from the beginning. I've seen what your people did to ours, and I've seen how, we responded. Do you want to know what I've learned? Vexthul said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. I learned that humanity spent thousands of years believing we were civilized. Dr. Quan continued. We thought we had evolved beyond our primitive instincts. We thought we were better than our ancestors who fought with spears and clubs. She gestured to the images of burning Velkhari worlds on the tactical display. But you taught us something important. Civilization is just a thin layer that covers our true nature. When you threaten our families, when you hurt our children, that layer disappears very quickly. We discovered that underneath our civilized exterior, we're still the same species that conquered every continent on Earth. We're still the predators who climbed to the top of the food chain by being better at killing than anything else on our planet. Yang nodded approvingly. Dr. Quan is correct. You awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for centuries. You reminded us what we're capable of when someone threatens what we love. The communication channel filled with desperate pleas from other Velkhari officials. They offered territory, technology, even their own lives in exchange for mercy. But Admiral Yang had heard enough. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Begin final operations. The Human Liberation Fleet spread across the system like an infection, moving toward every Velkhari installation with mechanical precision. They had done this so many times now that it had become routine. Rescue the humans first, document the crimes, then eliminate the criminals. But this operation was different. This wasn't just another liberation mission. This was the end of the Velkhari species. The rescued humans were evacuated quickly and efficiently to medical ships. Many of them were in terrible condition, but the Human Medical Corps had become experts at treating the injuries inflicted by alien sadism. Dr. Gina Wu's medical technologies, derived from captured alien equipment, could heal wounds that would have been fatal just a few years earlier. As the last human slave was brought aboard the rescue ships, Admiral Yang gave the order that every member of the fleet had been waiting to hear. All ships weapons free. Sterilize the system. What followed wasn't a battle. It was an execution. The Human Liberation Fleet systematically destroyed every Velkhari installation, every ship, every structure that had been built on human suffering. They used weapons powered by alien technology, missiles guided by alien computers, and shields reinforced with alien materials. Everything the Velkhari had traded for human lives was now being used to end Velkhari lives. When it was over, the Velkhari homeworld was a burning wasteland. The species that had enslaved hundreds of thousands of humans was extinct. Their colonies were ash. Their fleets were debris. Their civilization was a footnote in the history of human vengeance. Admiral Yang stood on his bridge, watching the fires consume the last Velkari city. Around him, his crew worked in silent satisfaction. Justice had been served. The debt had been paid in full. "Admiral," Captain Quan reported, "we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. Multiple species are requesting audience with human leadership. They're offering treaties, trade agreements, anything they think we want." Yang smiled grimly. "What they want is to make sure we don't do to them what we did to the Velkari." "Are we going to?" someone asked. Yang considered the question. In the past 2 years, humanity had become the most feared military force in the galaxy. They had demonstrated that technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy motivated by righteous fury and an absolute refusal to accept defeat.